You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Welcome to the Freio Music Podcast. I am your host, Michael Morahan. In this episode, I am interviewing ProJect Aspect. ProJect Aspect is a young artist out of Colorado who's making ripples and waves throughout the electronic music industry. He just crushes all the live sets that I've seen. His music is so energetic that really the crowd does not slow down. Doesn't matter what time it is. He is an energizer. He also is a collaborator who brings forth heavy, energetic electronic beats, but also plays live instrumentation on stage. I'll let him discuss a little bit more about that. So, without further ado, I bring to you the interview. Take it away, Jay.
My name is Jaramillo. I go by ProJect Aspect. I'm 29 years old and started playing guitar when I was like 10 years old. My dad gave me a guitar with a built-in amplifier on it, and previous to that I had never even thought about being a musician or even like playing music, but he kind of like shoved me in that direction, and the rest is kind of history. I just kind of picked it up and played by ear and started joining bands and putting together my own bands and like made t-shirts when I was like 10 years old. And that just kind of progressed and snowballed into producing music, which is what I got into at the end of high school. And after high school, I kind of took it to the next level, and me and my friend Zach Caruzas, aka Cruza Kid, one of my best friends, we went to high school together, and we started the Mile High Sound Movement, which is a collective of artists and a promotional record label that we have kind of like grown into what it is today, and it's becoming like bigger and better, and it's developing into what we want it to be. Instead of like just like throwing together random shows, like we put time into it and we curate events, and we make sure that our friends have a chance to like vend their jewelry and their merchandise, and we like to like kind of bring everything to the table, like with as much as we can.
Event.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's kind of been the focus for a while, other than like trying to like be a full-time touring musician. So that's where we're at now.
Nice. Now, tell me your vision a little bit more with Mile High Sound Movement. How many artists are involved currently, and where do you see it going in the future?
Our roster right now, I think we have like about 8 artists that we're like fully committed to right now. But I mean, it's always open for interpretation. Like if you're in the Colorado music scene, like don't hesitate to reach out, because we're always like, it's an open invitation, and we're always down to expand the family. But the vision at first was just to kind of help hungry musicians that like had a product that they were passionate about, give them a chance to showcase that, on a bigger level than just like a local cafe show. And so when me and my friend Zach were starting out, we had so much trouble getting shows. Like it was like such a struggle, and we really didn't have that much help. And we were doing a lot of shows at like Herman's Hideaway on South Broadway, because we had like a hip hop band at that point. But we wanted to bring something together that helped people that when we were in that situation that we wish that we would have had, So we just want to put people on and like get people to like in front of crowds and like enable them to do their thing.
Kind of help them get to the next level.
Exactly. And it's transformed into a record label, which has always been like the vision. And for about a year now, it's been like an official record label. And so we're really excited about that, and we want to kind of keep that going and like make that as big as possible.
That's awesome. So, I mean, clearly it sounds like you're kind of sharing what you've learned along your path with the next gen. or at least with your friends and the artists around you.
Right.
So, I mean, you mentioned your dad already. It was kind of an influence on you early musically.
Right.
Were there any other artists that kind of helped you on your path, or kind of taught you the guitar?
No, not really, man. Just kind of like my peers and like the people that I went to school with, that I ended up starting these like early bands with. Other than that, like I was just like kind of heavily influenced in like punk rock and classic rock. Like my dad raised me on classic rock, and I eventually just like got into like alternative music and punk rock, and that was a major influence to me, and that kind of like molded me in the early years, and did a lot of like power chords on the guitar, and like but it was all self-taught. Like I just kind of play by ear, and
Picking up the tabs online or something?
picking up tabs online, and kind of and honestly, like I can just like listen to something and replicate it
By ear by now?
but I mean, obviously I wish I had a little more classical training, but I mean, this way it's fun. Like I like to kind of let my mind do the work for me, do the work for my hands, and kind of just like freestyle. So that was like that played a huge role in the beginning too. And then when I started producing music, I kind of just like took that knowledge and put it into like arranging and like making sections of a sound.
Great. Lots of interesting stuff there. Can you remember your first musical memory as far as performing? So not just like hearing a song, but the first time you really either jumped up on the table in front of your family and started singing, or the first time you played for your school.
One memory sticks out vividly. I played at this coffee shop, and it was just an acoustic performance with me singing, and I was probably like 11 years old or 12 years old or something. But I told like my whole family and like all my friends, and like my whole family came out, and like we packed out this cafe.
That's
and it was
great.
just like this little coffee shop, and like I did like a couple covers, but it was mostly original. Like I've always just kind of written music and like played and performed it. But I remember covering like a Stained song. Remember that song "Outside"? It's like, I'm on the outside, I'm looking in. Played that song, played a bunch of other songs, and that was just like kind of the beginning. And that was the first musical memory, and it was pretty well received. But like, I was just a kid, like that was the very first time that I like showcased what I had been working on, and it was gratifying. It was tight.
That's awesome. And it's also, I think, very telling that you had a family there that like really, packed the venue.
Right.
So you had a sold out crowd your first show.
And my family's always been huge
that's
support, huge support. My mom, my dad, my brother, my siblings, like everyone has had my back from day one and believes in my dream, and that really helps me and like influences me to keep going.
That's awesome. So what, the guitar was your first instrument, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah,
right.
guitar was
What
the first
age?
one. 10 years old.
10
Yeah.
is when you started.
Yep.
All right. And what about artists that you kind of have influenced you, either by ear or by meeting them in person, touring? I know you're very active in the music scene,
Right.
so you get exposure to lots of different artists. But are there any artists maybe at a younger age that kind of impacted your trajectory or your ear?
Like I said, I was really into like punk rock back in the day. So like we were talking earlier about my Offspring remix, and
Yeah.
Offspring was like a big early like just kind of listening music influence for me. Like I liked Blink-182 a lot. Blink-182 was the first concert that I went to that I vividly remember. Apparently I was at Michael Jackson when I was like a year old, but I don't remember, and it's hard.
It counts a little bit.
If I don't remember it, I don't
Yeah.
want to believe it, but apparently that happened. So, but yeah, I mean, seeing Blink-182 when I was like 10 years, I think I was around 10 years old. That was right after I started playing guitar.
Did they play with Cypress Hill?
What? No, they played Bad Religion opened for them.
Okay.
And a lot of people back then thought that was kind of strange because Bad Religion was like a huge punk rock underground band, and Blink-182 had surpassed them playing like pop punk music. But that was a sweet experience. But I mean, I really didn't like start being inspired until like by music until like I started joining bands in like high school, and like my peers were kind of like huge influences for me. I had a band called Streetlight Symphony. It was like an emo band, and I mean the members in that band were definitely a huge influence for me. But I ended up going to a show at Red Rocks in 2005, and that was what really like opened my eyes to like a whole new world of music.
What show was that?
And that was Big Summer Classic, the 2-day event. String Cheese Incident headlined both nights, and they had a stacked lineup both nights with Humphreys McGee, Keller Williams, Michael Franti and Spearhead, Yonder Mountain String Band, and like that 2-day event like was kind of like a major turning point for me, because I went from like liking more like alternative music and hip hop and like rap music to like this like hippie jam band, like happy-go-lucky scene that like I had never imagined like participating in, but like it opened my eyes and like it turned my brain around and like made me want to kind of like explore that more.
Great. So we were talking earlier, and I found it interesting. Somehow it came up in conversation. You went to an atypical school, and that really impacted your life or perhaps your trajectory. If you could go into that a little bit and talk about why the change of school was such an impactful event for you.
So
And how old were you roughly?
So
What grade?
I left traditional school in 6th grade. Actually, yeah, I think it was 6th grade. It was like the transition from 5th to 6th grade. And I was going to Green Mountain Elementary School, and I had transferred over to Jefferson County Open School, which is an alternative school in Lakewood, Colorado, that my sister had been going to, because she was kind of a quote unquote problem child, and these schools were kind of meant for like kids who just weren't excelling in like traditional schools, and it kind of like helped them find like more meaning in their life and like kind of pave their road for the future, which was huge for me. Like this school, they made you create your own curriculum. So you did like 6 passages, and there's like adventure, global awareness, creativity, so on and so forth. And each one was just kind of like a different challenge for you to like research and like make a paper and like do like hands-on kind of work. And like, for instance, my creativity passage was making an album, and
It's awesome.
and so I made like my plan was to make like a full album, and I only got to like 3 tracks, just doing like multi-track recording. And it was a huge learning experience for me, because I learned that recording doesn't come easy, and you can't just knock something out just like that.
Yeah,
like it
3
takes
songs
time.
in a day.
Yeah, it takes so much time, and it really like opened my eyes to like what the world of music had in front of me the rest of my life. For my adventure passage, I became a vegetarian for 2 months, and like I learned a lot about the facts about meat and like healthy living, and like how it made me feel. Like I kind of got like a little irritable, and
With meat or without
without
meat?
it.
Without meat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of it made me kind of just like learn that I do like meat, and I like it in my life. But I'm still open to trying out.
Yeah, but that's great that you're open-minded enough to totally radically change your diet.
Yeah, no, it was a great experience for me. Like I said, I learned a lot
And that
about.
was part of your school.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
like,
interesting. I mean, coming from a Western mind, American
Right.
mind, thinking about diet in school is very, very far down the list
Right.
of topics.
Yeah,
So,
like that. So
interesting.
the school is more so getting you ready for the life ahead of you rather than getting you ready for more school, if that makes sense. Like instead of like kind of molding you to get ready for college and like keep learning, they mold you to get ready for the rest of your life. And it changed my life, and it like made me realize that I wanted to be a musician for the rest of my life. And you know, if it wasn't for that school and for my advisor Dana, you know, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And so I'm thankful every day that I made that transition.
That's great. Now, just out of curiosity, do you think this school would be great for everybody, or is this kind of a creative outlier school that's?
I think that this school is good for anyone who applies themselves and really uses their tools to like take on what you want to do. I think if you're really passionate about something, and I think that if you want to kind of get out of the traditional like learning situation and like focus on your life, like I think that's a good move.
That's great. So, okay, moving on from that, you collaborate frequently. There's many different vocalists on your tracks. You mentioned Cruise the Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about kind of collaboration, why you choose to do it, if it's important to you, and why.
I think the funnest thing about collaborating is that you are not limited to your own ideas. So when I collaborate with somebody, it's fun because you can take a palette that someone else laid out and manipulate it. You kind of already have like something to work with. When you're doing something by yourself, you have to start from scratch. You know, it's all you, and so like you're kind of limited to that. When you're working with someone else, like it sparks off so many more light bulbs. You know, like it makes you kind of more. It brings more influence to the table. And like for instance, when I collaborate with Unlimited Gravity, we feed off each other. We bounce back and forth. We do what we call the hot seat, and that's when we're in the mode. Like one of us is going to be producing, the other one will be kind of chilling in the background. And when we're the one producing, like we call that the hot seat, and we just go until like we feel like we did something substantial, and then like switch it out.
Yep.
And you know, eventually we come up with like this orchestration of sound that you know we would never be able to accomplish on our own. And like that's the beautiful thing with collaboration, is that you can use both minds to create something bigger.
That's great. You said a lot of awesome points that I hope young musicians hear and really take to heart, because as you said, when you're working with yourself, you're limited to yourself.
Right.
And you got to recognize everybody's finite, you know, we're all limited. But I love the hot seat idea too. Both the fact that, you know, when you're feeling the flow, you got to be in the driver's seat and in the control center, in the cockpit or whatever, you know, behind the mixer. But at the same time, you also got to yield way to the other for their turn in the hot seat, and kind of sit back and listen. And sometimes,
right,
you know, by letting because I'm assuming you guys are working with loops, and you know, you got to let the sound kind of soak in.
Exactly.
And eventually, you know, maybe an idea comes out
right
from not the hot seat, but from the dude chilling in the back who's been there with his eyes closed.
Exactly.
So you got
there's two important roles for sure.
Yeah, but I feel like
it's easy to let it. It's fun to like sit back and listen to what you've been working on, and listen to what they're working on.
Truth.
Top of that,
because like one person's actively like trying to slay the dragon, and then the other person is just kind of being more passive and like letting it like reflective.
Yeah,
like letting it bounce off them.
I like that. Yeah, that's definitely the approach for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I think it actually takes a lot of discipline to sit back and let somebody else do.
That's true too.
Do some work,
and you'd be surprised how anxious we can get too.
Oh yeah,
like,
you got to speak up, and you're like.
Sometimes we're like, oh, let me get in there. I got this idea, but it's equally important. And like I said, collaboration is just like another level of creation.
Great. So tell me about your album.
And I'm working on a full-length concept album called Think About It, which is kind of my baby right now, and this is what I'm kind of working towards and putting all my energy towards right now. So did you want to talk about All We Dream, or did you want to talk about...
No. Let's talk about your new album.
Okay. So this new album is called Think About It. It's a full-length concept album, which means that it flows from beginning to end. So there's no like breaks and tracks.
So it's meant to be listened to in order.
Correct. Yeah. And so it's just one long story. And I had always wanted to create something like this ever since I was a kid, like listening to Pink Floyd albums and stuff. So this is like a really important project for me, because this is actually breaking me outside of like my comfort zone more. Because when I was a kid and I was in and out of bands playing guitar and singing, I did a lot of singing and a lot of like just writing, and I wanted to kind of get back to that. I'm not the greatest singer in the world, but I like to sing. So I did like a little singing on this album, and I did a lot of guitar work, and I just wanted it to be something that kind of lasts forever. Like the idea behind this is just to like make something that has substance and that holds true to generations to come. I just want something that's gonna like stick around and that people are gonna be listening to for a long time.
So is it fair? I mean, are you collaborating with other artists on this?
I do have Cruiser Kid featured on a track.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is it fair to say that this new album is in a way a different path than the others? In the sense that you're getting back to your singing and writing?
In a way, yes, but it also still stays pretty true to the traditional Project Aspect sound. I don't want to do something completely different that it's unrecognizable, but I just want to expand on what I've already got. And so it's just kind of more complex, I should say, and like kind of more just has like more, like I said, substance to it. Like there's just like, I want to branch out my sound, and I don't want to just limit myself to like making dubstep or just bass music or electronic music. Like I want it to be like real music that, you know, anyone could listen to. And so I'd like to head in that direction, but like I'll never stop making like heavy bass music, because like I love playing that at shows, and you know that's always going to be something that's, you know, important to me. So I just wanted to branch out on this album and like kind of create something that just had a lot to it, and you know that can reach different demographics.
That's great. So it's going to be kind of a wide-ranging album?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have some...
Yeah, you've got like some rock and roll inspired tracks in there, where I do like a lot of like intricate guitar soloing and like harmonizing my guitar a lot. And then you're going to find like hip-hop sounding tracks, like the one that Cruiser Kid's going to be on. And then there's obviously ones that are going to follow, you know, the traditional Project Aspect sound that I've always kind of stapled in my music, and I'm always going to love to make like the glitch hop kind of grimy bass music. So there's always going to be parts of that, and there's definitely parts of that scattered throughout the whole record. And I'm excited for it, man. Like this is something I've been working on for almost 2 years, and I haven't released a full-length album since like 2016. So this is like a big one for me, and I'm hoping that it kind of breaks some barriers.
Yeah. I believe it will. I'm excited to hear it.
Thanks.
And we're all going to have to stay tuned. And where will the new album be released? Just for our listeners, where can they find it when it comes out?
You know, we're still in the early stages of it. I've got a lot of promo work I'm trying to work on, but I'm shooting for the end of spring.
End of spring. Okay.
Yeah.
And when it comes out, Project Aspect music.com?
Right.
Right?
We're also working on launching the Project Aspect website, so stay tuned for that. So it's going to be kind of like a process of things leading up to the album. So first we're going to launch the website, and then we're going to launch the music videos for the singles, and then the album's going to drop. And we're going to do like the whole album release party thing in Denver, and it's just kind of like one thing after another
Nice.
leading up to the album.
Well, that's a good campaign.
Yeah.
So some of the people listening will likely be listening in years to come. So in a way, we'll be in the past when they're listening.
Okay.
So am I correct with the URL though? projectaspectmusic.com?
Right. Yeah. for
Okay.
sure.
I just want to make sure because when it's launched, somebody will be new to it
There you
and
go.
it'll be already out there.
Right.
So just want to make sure I get that right for
Yeah.
the record.
That'll 90% likely be the URL.
Okay,
For sure.
cool. So when you decide to, market your music, first of all, how do you balance your time between creating new music, performing your creations, and at the same time, hustling, for lack of a better term? You got to get the next venue to call you. You got to get on the next bill. You got to collaborate with these artists. And not only that, but you got to launch a website. You got to get your music videos. You got to get your apparel. So really, how do you balance all those demands? And, do you have a team working with you?
Really, it's just kind of deciding what to do next. It's just one day at a time. Really, like we try not to look too far into the future because you only know what's going to happen today. And so we're really steadily game planning. Me and my manager, Chris Bachman, and Ronnie, Unlimited Gravity. We're really just kind of scheming towards what we're going to do next. And we're going to be releasing a new Unlimited Aspect album, Bass Ass Volume 2, which should be coming out in the next few months. And so that's going to be the beginning of kind of that route because, me and Ronnie love making music together and we love doing the Unlimited Aspect thing. So we want to do that as much as possible. But as far as finding balance, man, like I said, it's just like kind of taking on one thing at a time and not overwhelming yourself because we do everything in-house. Like we don't have, we're not working with an agency right now. We're not working with the management. We're doing everything ourselves. And so it makes it that much harder, but at the same time, the reward is that much sweeter. So we're just kind of organically trying to create this snowball and this like tidal wave that eventually is just going to crash and like it's going to reach everybody and it's going to be something special, man, because we're working on something unique and it's going to be something that I hope people are going to be behind for a long time.
It's awesome. Okay, so when you're releasing an album, let's say you and Ronnie are making a collaboration, do you then finalize it, stamp it, bounce it, and you're done, or do you send it to a mixing mastering engineer? Can you kind of walk me through the workflow once you've produced a song?
So when me and Ronnie produce solo tracks, we usually do our own mastering, and it's kind of just like an unorthodox method. Like we just use plugins and do it our way. But sometimes we send it into mastering. Sometimes we create mix downs that are kind of at a lower volume and send them to someone to master. But for the Unlimited Aspect album, this was kind of a unique situation because we tracked drums for this album because Unlimited Aspect has become the live band. So our drummer Steven Kuzma is going to be featured on the entire album. So that was like kind of another challenge because we had to track all the drums, and then our engineer who ended up moving away, we kind of weren't able to finish it completely with him, and so we kind of had to take it on with what he had and finish it ourselves. And that's where we're at right now, is just kind of like putting the final touches on it and finishing it ourselves. So we like to do a lot of it hands-on. It's not the most professional method, but it sounds good in my opinion. And I mean, I don't know. We like to have it be our completely our own, you know.
That makes sense. And you get the final say. You get control over
Right.
it, and nobody's gonna, send it in a different direction that you
Yeah.
didn't.
And I've sent my own masters to like some pretty good labels, and they've accepted it, which has felt pretty good. So
Nice.
I think we're on the right track.
Great. And if you don't mind, can we jump into some of your equipment that you use either on stage or in the studio? What types of software, plugins, mics, guitar, whatever you want.
Produce in Ableton. We perform all original tracks, so I break down all of my songs into stems. So that's like pieces of the songs that I play simultaneously, kind of so I can affect every piece differently. So we have like highs, bass, drums, vocals, and so we play that all simultaneously. So that and we use APC 40s by Akai. So that when we're using our APC 40s, we can literally manipulate like pieces of the song and mix in different pieces of the song and kind of like jam out and toggle back and forth with anything that we make. And like all the songs we make are split up so that we can kind of like do this crazy interactive hands-on DJing technique that not a lot of people do. And I think that it's like really it's unique, like because a lot of people use stems, but the way that we use them is just like is unmatchable in my opinion.
So you're talking about the live performance, right?
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about like a beat pad that has translucent buttons, right?
Right. And it's a MIDI controller.
MIDI controller.
Yeah.
And that hooks up into Ableton.
Correct.
And so you're slicing and dicing your song on the fly.
Right. So we produce them, we export them all into pieces, and we put them into the live set, and we slice and dice them on the fly. Correct.
All right. And then so beyond, the computer and how you're interacting with your tracks, I've seen you perform and you frequently have a guitar and everybody's got an instrument basically on stage with you.
Yeah.
So how are you mixing that in? And tell me about what instruments you play and what's on stage.
So like I said, I started out playing guitar when I was a kid. And then I went into the producing game, and I kind of put down the guitar for a while, probably like 3 years. And eventually I realized that I wanted to bring it back into the music and just have it all together, the electronic and the analog. So for the past like 3 or 4 years, I've been really hitting the guitar hard and bringing it back into the live sets and back into the recordings. And so when I do the live set guitar, I do live looping. And so I have the guitar plugged into another computer, which is also on Ableton, and I sync the two computers together via Ethernet. And that enables the second computer to slave to the first computer, so I can quantize and loop my guitar on another controller, and I can manipulate the guitar I record on the fly with the controller. And so that's been a really fun adventure to like kind of bring that in and also like have it be part of the live set where I can still like manipulate it like the other tracks, and it can be all like one huge live workstation, and it's really fun. It's fun to like kind of improvise and bring it in now and again and just rock out.
Nice.
Yeah. But like for Unlimited Aspects, so I play guitar, Ronnie plays keys, and then we have our drummer Steven Kuzma, and Ronnie does live looping with the keys too. And eventually he's going to bring in his vocals again, which we were doing for a while. He was doing live vocals and like looping live vocals. But he's working on a new album as well, which is showcasing his vocals, because he was in choir pretty much his whole life, and so he wants to go back to his roots and kind of showcase that. So I imagine that when we start doing more Unlimited Aspect shows, that he's going to start singing too. So that's exciting. But sometimes we bring up saxophone. Sometimes we have other sit-ins. I dabble with pretty much any instrument except for brass. I've never really messed with brass, but I mean, anything I touch, I can play a little bit. Not great, but I can dabble.
Enough to be quantized, spliced, and put into place.
Yeah, the guitar is the main
Okay.
instrument that I feel like I can handle. But
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you kind of revealing how you got two computers running. One's a slave to the other.
yeah, I feel like people don't get to like know that or like see that in a live set. So
it's I always, as an audience member, am sitting there thinking like, how are they doing this, and trying to kind of decode what's
Right.
going on stage. Because as a sound engineer myself, I'm
Right.
thinking about monitor mixes, and I see people with in-ear monitors,
Yeah.
and there's got to be somebody's got a click track somewhere, and
Right.
it's a complex signal path. So I appreciate you kind of demystifying what's going on.
Yeah,
on
it's
stage.
a pleasure for sure.
Because it's certainly interesting, and I think it'll help people get to the next level. Well, a few more questions. One regarding your music and distribution. So your music is out there. I can stream you on Spotify, on Apple Music. I can find you on SoundCloud. You're doing a great job getting your music out there. So how did you, first of all, decide where to put your music and how to get it out there? And we'll start there.
Man, that's a really good question. I mean, basically with music that I've come to the conclusion of, so you just got to get it out there regardless of how you do it, whether you're peddling burnt CDs or, you're putting it on SoundCloud or you're doing like a professional label release. Like it in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter because it's going to be out there and word of mouth is going to circulate. And that's what I'm coming to the conclusion of is that, if I have music to release, I need to get it out there regardless of how it happens. One of the first Sonic Blooms that I attended, shout out Sonic Bloom, by the way. That's like my hometown festy right there. I burnt a bunch of CDs, me and Ronnie, actually, Unlimited Gravity, we burnt a bunch of CDs and we handed them out to people. And to this day, people still come up to me. And this was like 8 years ago. To this day, people still come up to me like, I have that CD that you gave me in Sonic Bloom. And like, that's crazy to me because that was such early on music that we made. And
you were there as a fan.
And I was there as a fan that
an
year.
attendee,
yeah.
Non-performer.
Correct.
So you really just showed up to where the music is, hustled your music, and then, give it a few years.
And it was the dopest campaign too, because we would just be like, "Do you guys like free music?" And people would be like, "Yeah, here, take this," And so it was easy to get into people's hands. And I might start doing that again.
What's amazing to me is, a few years later, a few circles around the sun, and you're playing at Sonic Bloom, and that's awesome. So
yeah, really came full circle with that one for sure. Yeah.
So that's interesting, but I appreciate you sharing, the hustle, and you gotta kind of be guerrilla marketing,
It's true, man. Like
stuff.
just gotta kind of think outside the box, and I mean, people's been hustling CDs out of their trunks forever. But I mean, when you're giving out free music, like it's kind of hard to say no, So that was definitely like the early hustle.
All right. So a few more quick ones. So these ones should be pretty quick. So first of all, describe your music in one sentence or a word. Rough sentence. You can. It could flow into you.
All original, high energy, high octane, electronic bass music.
Nice.
With guitar.
Booyah. Okay, so this one is kind of far out, big, like philosophical question. I'm, went to school for philosophy, so you got to forgive me. But
I love it.
What is music?
Music is what feelings sound like.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's the best I can come up with right there.
No, that's great. All right. Do you have any like odd or interesting pre-performance rituals before you get out on stage? Are you doing Anything crazy? Getting yourself ready?
We like to get down on the spliff game. Me and my bro Cam. I love smoking spliffs, so that's always been something that I like to do before a show. But other than that, man, just I mean, I get anxious before shows. Honestly, every show,
Is it nerves coming up?
It's nerves, but it's also just wanting to get up there.
Yeah.
And, like, kind of just being backstage and having to wait to go on is just like kind of something that I've always had not an issue with, but it just always kind of happens, regardless of the situation. I'm excited. I want to get up there and I want to play. Like, I don't want to hang around and talk about nothing. I want to, like, do my thing, But if I want to, but I love connecting with the people, and that's like one of the biggest parts of this scene in the community is just like the people, and it's all about just like making those connections. And so that's a big part of the pre-ritual, is just like having your family there and having your friends come backstage and hang out and kick it, and that really kind of calms the nerves for me too.
Nice.
So just hanging out with the homies too is just like a big thing.
That makes sense. What advice would you give to a musician starting out today?
Just go with your heart. Make music that you want to hear. Make music that makes you feel things inside. Don't do it for somebody else. Do it for yourself. That's all I really have to say.
Great. Okay. Moving towards the end, some label questions, if you don't mind me jumping in. So, doing some research, you're on 1320, Gruntworth, and Adapted Records. Can you tell me about how you made the connections, how you first got signed to a record label? There's lots of aspiring artists out there who think that I just need a record label, and then the doors will open for me. So I just want to hear your experience with the different record labels that you've worked with, and kind of why you chose to collaborate with them.
Well, as I mentioned before, it's not a huge impactful thing, regardless of how you release your music. But it is an honor and always a privilege to release your music under an established record label. So it's just another form of collaborating too. As I mentioned before, collaboration is one of the most beautiful creations we have. And so it's fun to work with other people on your music and like work on distributing it and getting it out there. But 1320 was a huge one for me because, I mean, that's Sound Tribe's record label. Sound Tribe was a huge early influence for me. They were kind of the first band that I saw using Ableton, and that was before I even knew what Ableton was, and they made me research what Ableton was, and eventually I got signed to their label, and eventually I got to open for them, and that was another full circle thing. So shout out Sound Tribe too for everything that they've done for me. But 1320 Records was a huge step for me, and it was cool just to be not only under the name of such a huge touring act and someone that I've looked up to, but also being alongside other people that have released music under that label. And that's like a kind of another cool thing, is when you release music under a different label, is you're alongside all these amazing artists, like there's so many artists out there that like most of them I've never even heard of, and like, but they make the dopest music. And so like, it's an honor to be alongside, similar, people with similar interests, I should say. So that's kind of the funnest part about working with labels. The Adapted thing was cool because it's an Australian label. It was cool to get my music internationally released. And so that was kind of the fun part about that one. But it's just like I said, fun to work with other people.
So how'd you get to Australia?
Man, we submitted it and they liked it and they released it.
All right. So walk through a young artist. What do you mean submitted it? So you found something on their website. Obviously, you had some tracks that were fire and ready to be released.
Yeah. So, I mean, most record labels have a demo submission page on their website. So if you make music, I mean, you can always send it to labels. Like it's not an issue. Whether or not they'll listen to it, like it, that's, up in the air. But most labels have a demo submission page. Like even the biggest record labels in the world have like mailing addresses you can send demos to. But yeah, it's just submitting your demo and hoping that the right person hears it and likes it. And it helps having kind of word of mouth and having friends on the inside too that have worked with the record label also. So that kind of I think that is a slightly helpful, more helpful way. But like if you have like the right music and you submit it, like there's no reason why it won't be picked up.
But you chose them out of a group because there's hundreds, thousands of record labels, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would imagine you targeted some. I would guess that you didn't send your record out to every label.
Yeah.
So how do you choose, and what do you look for when you're working with a label?
You just look for professionalism. That's the one thing that you try to find with anyone that you work with in the music industry. Just professionalism, because there's a lot of shady people out there, and it's important to find people that are doing it for the right reasons and people that are in it for the music and are like willing to work to help you get your brand out there. So just like being on top of like dates and like royalty checks or what have you, just like being communicative and just like having communication between the artist and the label is really important.
That makes a lot of sense. So reflecting back on your younger self, what would you tell yourself now or then what you know now?
Get ready for a hell of a ride, buddy. Got to meet a lot of people and see a lot of things. I don't know, man. I think that I was prepared for what I'm doing today, and I think the school that I went to, and my dad, and going to shows has just like molded me into the person I am today. And so I think I knew what I was in for, but not quite in the fashion that's in right now. So I think I just tell myself to get ready for a good ride.
Nice. Well, Jay, aka ProJect Aspect, thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything last parting words of wisdom you'd like to share, and or links, plugs for your upcoming album, social handles that you want to add?
Yeah, keep in touch on the Facebook, man. That's the Facebook and the Instagram are the number one resources to find what I'm doing next. So Facebook.com/Project Aspect, SoundCloud.com/Project Aspect. Like I said, I'm going to be launching my website soon, so keep an eye out for that, along with starting the promotion for my new album. So keep an eye out for the new music videos coming in the next few months, and just keep in touch. Don't be afraid to reach out. Like, I love to connect. So
cool. And fans can learn of your new tour dates and upcoming shows on your Facebook page?
Yes.
All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it.
Much love.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.